That's the sound we are recreating in Serum today. If you like it, make sure to subscribe, press the notification bell so you see all of our videos, and hit like on the video. What's up guys, this is Tassian with Cymatics, and today I'm going to be walking you through how to make this little intro loop from the Flume song Smoke in Retribution. So we are going to do this in two parts. The first part is going to be the lead, and the second part is going to be the pad. So let me play the original, and then I will show you our version. Alright, so that is the original, and this is our version. Alright, so like I said, we're going to do this in two parts, and it's also something to keep in mind is that for this pad preset, in the noise oscillator, we are using a preset from FL Studio. So this is an FL Studio sound that we put into the noise oscillator. So that is just something I wanted to say before we started. All right, but anyway, let's get into it. All right, so first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make a new MIDI track. So we're going to hit Command-Shift-T, and then we are going to open up Serum. And then we are going to Option drag this MIDI down to our new track. So it's exactly the same, because this MIDI gets really crazy. I mean, like, look at all this. This is wild. So now we should be hearing. So for this sound, we are going to be using Oscillator A, Oscillator B, and the noise oscillator. So let's go ahead and set those up. Oscillator A and B are just going to stay as saw waves, and we're going to bump Oscillator A up an octave. And then other than that, nothing else is going to change, except we're going to put the pan at 15 to the right. So how I did that is I double clicked on the pan knob and I typed in 15. And if you can't double click, you can go into global and select double click for typable values on controls. And then when you click that, this little button right here will illuminate, and you can click that to save, and then you'll be able to double click from now on. So that is all we're going to do for Oscillator A. Oscillator B, we are going to move this up to 4 for the unison, and we're going to take the detune down to 0.04, and we're going to leave the blend where it is, and we're also going to take this pan and put it 15 to the right. And this is because if you listen, and you can even see right here in the actual wave of the original, is that this right here is the lead, and these two bars represent right and left, and he has the pad panned left and the lead pan to the right. So we are just panning this to the right slightly. All right, so let's set up our noise oscillator. We are going to select ARP circuit, and we're going to select key track so it follows the pitch of whatever key you're on. And we're going to double click on pitch and type in 33 to bring it up. And we're going to take the level up a tad bit to around 35. So now we should be hearing. So, I mean, we're already getting pretty close, but this sounds a little too clean for it to be like a Flume sound. So now let's go in and mess with this envelope 1, because this is going to be driving a few modulations and the overall volume of the patch. So we're going to take this attack and bring it up to 53 milliseconds, just so it's not so clicky. And you can kind of hear it like sucking in a little bit, and that's like a great kind of timbre to this sound. We're going to go to the decay and go to 230 milliseconds and take the sustain all the way down. All right, sounding really good. So next thing we can do is we might as well set our only LFO up. We are going to drag this point in the middle all the way over to the end and curve this up a tad. We're also going to take off BPM and turn on anchor, and we're going to take this rate to 11.4. So let's type that in actually. All right, and then we're going to take the smooth up to 80.7. Then we're going to start modulating. So we're going to take LFO 1, and this is only going to be modulating two different things, and it's the level of oscillator B and A. So we are going to drag this level all the way down and turn it up. And then we're going to drag this level down to 20 and put the LFO1 onto oscillator B's volume. So now we should be hearing. So this is just kind of making it sound like more choppy and more like erratic. So next we're going to do is we're going to turn on the filter and go down to a reverb filter, which is one of my favorite filters. Very, very useful. We are going to enable the key tracking, so this filter moves when the notes are changing. And we are going to type in 118 hertz. And then for the resonance, we are going to type in 17, so it's just a bit more resonant. And then we're going to go ahead and put envelope 1 on the cutoff, but we're only going to drag this range down to 1 because we just want it to happen a little bit. And we are going to leave it like this, so we only want oscillator A to be running through this filter. And then the only other thing we're going to do this filter is take the mix and turn it down to 70. So now we should be hearing. All right, so that is everything we need to do for the oscillators. So we're going to go to the effects tab, and the first effect we're going to put on is an EQ. And we are going to make this a low cut. And we are going to take this frequency to 405. And we're going to take the resonance down to 40 actually, because we want it to be a little bit more mellow. So you can just hear that we're cutting out a lot of that low end, and it's giving that nice sort of like thin and lo-fi impression. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to leave this as a high shelf, and we're going to take the Q down to 20 because we want this to be a gradual boost, and we're going to boost it to 5 decibels. Our next effect we're going to put on is the hyper and dimension, and this is basically just going to broaden the stereo image. So we are going to leave this at 16, the rate, leave the detune at 25, and leave the hyper wet at 50. So we're going to leave this exactly how it is. And then we're going to take the size of the dimension, take it to 14, and take the mix to 25. The next effect we're going to put on is the chorus. And this is basically just going to create a nice layer underneath the sound. So we're going to make our first delay at 1.2. Our second delay at 2.7. So now we should be hearing. And this is basically just 2 separate delays, and they're very, very quick delays. And we're basically going to dial in how much feedback we want right here. So we're going to take that up to 57. So yeah, it's given like a really weird effect because we almost have like a phaser going on right here with the chorus rate and the depth amount. And these 2 small delays are off time, so we're getting like a really, really cool stereo effect. And then we're going to take this low pass filter and bring it all the way up. So you can kind of hear like when I drag it down. So we're going to want that all the way up. And then we're going to take this mix down to 12% because it's a little too stand out right now. So yeah, it's sounding nice. We don't really want it too prominent, but it sounds good right where it is. The next effect we're going to put on is distortion. And we are going to select rectify and take this drive down to 13 and put the mix at 30. So it's not making a huge difference, but it's just adding a little bit of saturation and distortion. And that's how I would kind of recommend to use this distortion, because you can really like mess the sound up really quick. So like listen to this all the way up. So if you throw that all the way up, that's what'll happen. So we're going to keep these settings pretty low. Next effect we're going to put on is a filter, and we are going to keep this at the MG low 6. We're going to take this cut off to 1419, and then we are going to make our last modulation with envelope 1, and we're going to drag that on and drag the range down to 14. And this is sort of just taming the frequencies, so we're letting the filter open up a little bit, and then we're closing it right back down because we don't want a ton of those high frequencies resonating throughout. So then we're going to actually turn the resonance up to 15. And that'll be the last thing we do for that filter. So the next effect we're going to want is a delay. And we're going to take this down to around 34. And we are going to select link so both of these rates stay the same whenever we change it. And we're going to take off BPM so we can type in our value in milliseconds. So we are going to type in 10.09, and then we're going to leave this dry wet right around here. So this is a similar effect to what we did with the chorus, except this delay is a little bit longer and we only have one delay going on. And there really isn't like a phasing feature, but it's pretty similar to what we're doing with the chorus. And the last effect we want is a reverb, and we're going to leave this on Hall, and we're going to leave the size at 35, the decay at 4.7 or 4.6, whatever it comes on. And we're going to turn the low cut all the way down or leave it all the way down. We're going to leave the high cut right here. So these 4 settings will all be the same. We're going to leave the spin rate on 25. We're going to turn the spin depth down to 11 and the mix down to 8 because we don't want it that high. So that is our sound. All right, so now let's move on to part 2 of this video, and this will be the pad. All right, so it's important to note that inside of this pad, we have a custom noise that we put in the noise oscillator called String C, and this is actually a sound from FL Studio. So we're going to include this sound along with the patch and the MIDI in the download in the description. So be sure to grab that and put this into Serum because it will not sound the same without it. So anyway, let's get into it. We're going to start by holding Command-Shift-T to make a new MIDI track, and we are going to open up Serum. And we will Alt drag or Option drag the MIDI down to our new track. So now we should be hearing. All right, so let's get into it. For this sound, we are going to be using Oscillator A, Oscillator B, and the noise oscillator. So Oscillator A, we are going to select our wavetable called Basic Shapes. We are going to drag the wavetable position up to 3. Oscillator B is going to be saw rounded, and we are going to drag this wavetable position up to 15. And let's get into the noise oscillator real quick. So you have to turn on the noise oscillator to import a custom sound. So I'm going to go to my downloads and my folder where I have the noise saved, and it should be under Serum Noise Oscillator Stock FL Studio String Sample. String C, and we will drag that onto the noise oscillator. So let's turn this up to around 80% so we can hear. So you can hear that the noise oscillator is playing the same sound every time. So we're going to select Key Track Enable. So whatever note we're playing, it will track the key. The noise is really low, so we are going to double click and type in 36, and that'll bring it up 3 octaves. And now the noise is at the right octave and following the pitch. So let's go ahead into our oscillators, and first thing we're going to do is drag the unison of Oscillator A up to 8. And we're going to take the detune down to 0.02. And we are going to do the same thing for Oscillator B, drag the unison up to 8, take the detune down to 0.02. Also, one thing that we need to do is we are going to be using this velocity map. I'll get into that in a second, but let's take this volume down to 40 and this volume down to 45. So now we have. And what we're going to do now is we are going to make one of our 2 modulations. We are going to drag this velocity mapping onto the oscillator A level and drag the range down to 50. So basically what this is going to be doing is if you look at our MIDI, all of the MIDI velocities are at 100. And the max you can go is 127 and the minimum is 1. So let's go back into our Serum and I'll explain this. So imagine this point right here being 1 and this point right here being 127. And then also imagine this point right here being 1 and this point right here being 127. Our velocities are at 100, so the true volume it'll be playing will be somewhere right around here. So now let's listen. And you can actually see when I, the little blue dot in between this white notch and the blue line is what volume it's playing. So you can actually see when I play the note, the dot is hovering right around here. So that is the true volume it's playing. So besides that, the only other modulation we're going to have is on envelope 1. So let's go ahead and get that set up now. We're going to take the attack to 248. So you can hear it ramping up nice and slow and smooth. We're going to take the decay down to 957. And that won't do anything until we mess with the sustain. And we're going to take the sustain down to negative 22.3. And you can hear it cutting off very sharp. We don't want that. So we're going to take the release up to 833. So envelope 1 always controls the volume of everything. But other than that, we are going to map this to a filter in the effects. But first, let's go ahead and work on the filter in the oscillator tab first. So we're going to turn on our filter, select A, B, and the noise oscillator, and we're going to go down to our miscellaneous tab and select all passes. And this is kind of making the synth a little bit thinner and giving it a tiny bit more texture. All right, so we're going to start by taking the cutoff of the filter down to 235. And then we are going to bump the resonance up to 65. We're going to take the drive up to 22%, which is just going to be kind of overdriving the filter. And we are going to be playing with this knob a little bit. We're going to take this up to 73. So you might think that this knob doesn't do anything because there's a little hash mark right there, but it actually does. So let's take this up to 73. And you can see how it's almost like cutting out some of those highs. All right, so yeah, it's sounding really nice because at first the synth was sounding a little thin, and now we're kind of clamping down on those highs a little bit and giving it more of a pad sound rather than like a full chord sound. So that was really a cool way to do it, to give it a nice texture and kind of cut down on those highs. So that's it for the oscillator tab. Now it is time to move into the effects tab. So the first effect we're going to put is hyper and dimension, and this is sort of detuning the synth even more in kind of an unnatural way. But we're going to leave these settings as is. And then the next thing we're going to do is go to this dimension, take the size down to 11, and the mix up to 43. The next effect we're going to put is a filter, and this is going to be the MG low 24. And this is basically going to cut down on those highs a little bit more and give it even more of a pad sound. So we're going to take the cutoff to 1389. So we're going to drag this onto the cutoff of the filter and drag the range down to 7. And we're going to leave the resonance and drive where it is and take the fat knob up to 50. And this is basically just boosting and kind of overdriving those lows and low mids and just making the sound a little bit warmer. And we're going to take the mix down to 96%. All right, so the next effect we're going to add is an EQ, and we'll drag this up to the top. And we're going to make this a low cut, and we're going to take the frequency to 339 and the Q down to 40 so it's nice and smooth. And then we're going to leave this next one a high shelf, and we are going to take the frequency up to 1801 and the Q down to 40. And then we're going to boost this 7 decibels. Our next effect we're going to add is a delay. And we're going to leave the feedback where it is. And we're going to take this right delay and make it 1/8. So you can hear that delay kind of delaying out, especially on that last one. And we're going to take this filter, which is basically going to EQ what we want and what we don't want for not the original sound, but the echo and delay after the sound. So we're going to take this frequency to 1760 and take the Q down to 1.8. So we're basically EQing out some of those lows and a little bit of highs. And then we are going to take the dry wet up to 34. Next effect we need is a reverb, and we're going to leave it on the Hall setting. Take the verb size up to 47. Take the decay down to 2.1. So this is just giving a little bit more space than there actually is. And we're going to take the low cut up to 33 and the high cut all the way down. So we're cutting out some of those muddy lows of the reverb, but not cutting out any of the highs. Then we're going to take the spin up to 28, the spin depth down to 24, and the mix up to 40. So by turning the mix up so high, we just made the sound very, very airy, which is good. And that's giving it definitely more of a pad feel. Then the last effect we're going to use is a compressor, and this is going to act as a traditional compressor, not like a multi-band OTT compressor that we would use for like dubstep or trap synths. So we're going to take the threshold of this compressor and turn it down to -35.2, so it's hitting the threshold harder. So that's a lot of compression. We don't want that. So we're going to affect the amount of compression by changing the ratio and changing it from 4 to 1.4. So now it's only slightly compressing the sound instead of like full-blown like brick walling it. And we're going to make this compressor a little bit quicker by changing the attack down to 28, the release down to 25. So it's really just compressing that initial peak and transient and just kind of, rounding it out. And then we're going to take the gain up by 6 to bring some of that volume back. And then the only difference besides that is we need to take this master down to 50. Like always, the download is in the description, and that comes with the presets, the MIDI, and that custom noise oscillator noise, which is a string sound from FL Studio. So be sure to grab that and run back through it, or if you did it first time around, then great. But I hope you guys learned a lot and enjoyed the video. I'm Tassione, and this is Cymatics.